Nossa, eu tô falando e tá mutado o bagulho. Enfim, gente, é o seguinte. Essa live aqui é apenas pra gente assistir o Paladins Pro Circuit, é esse jogo que eu curto muito, né? E nada melhor do que a gente ver uns pró jogando, né? Logo menos vai começar aqui. E... né, faltam só uns 10 segundinhos aqui. E a ideia é só a gente assistir, discutir, ver aí qual que é as ideias desses caras. E só isso mesmo, não tem nada de muito especial não, pra falar a verdade. Então só vamos ver aí. Beleza? Vamos embora. Ó, meu inglês não tá muito bom, então não vou traduzir tudo não, tá? Vou falar o que eu consegui entender aqui, beleza? Na verdade, não vou entender praticamente nada, que americano é foda. Mas enfim, vamos assistir um pouquinho aí.
Up against Flashpoint. My name is Dolson. Kresnik joins me to talk about this one. And Kres, maybe I kind of said it all. I think Europe is going to be one of the more contested regions, starting off with a fantastic game here.
Aqui eles estão falando só meio que dando o inicial da parada, né? Você vê que é mó simples, né, mano? O esquema que os caras fazem, né? Que da hora. Não sabia que era assim que eles faziam. Na verdade é a primeira vez que eu tô assistindo uma live assim de Paladins Pro Circuit. O que seria Pro Circuit? Tá sem áudio. Paulo Salles, obrigado pela presença aí. Relux, o que seria Pro Circuit? Na verdade é o circuito dos pros, basicamente, né? Tipo assim, a ideia aí tá sendo... as galeras participarem de várias eliminatórias, né? E cada semana tem uma eliminatória diferente, justamente para poder ir fechando, destrinchando a chave, assim, para poder, no fim das contas, ter se eu não me engano, uma semifinal e uma final, né? Enfim, deixa eu arrumar aqui enquanto rola o vídeo aí, que parece que a jogatina não vai rolar agora, né? Os caras estão embaçando demais pra falar aí. Aqui mesmo. Deixa eu ver. Aqui mesmo. Então é isso. Só pra gente assistir aí e trocando ideia. E aí, como é que vocês estão, mano? Tá tudo sus aí? Como é que tá? Puta, já deu pau aqui na live. Caralho, mano. O OBS não pode ficar aberto, mano. Essa porra. Nossa, que raiva. Se der pau aí, vocês avisam, tá? E eu vou aumentar o volume do bagulho aqui. Então aqui são as eliminatórias dos times pro Mundial, né? Up against Full Send. Interesting though, I remember when Flashpoint announced that they were picking up a separate roster. It was so wild to me. It's gonna take some getting used to, I think. The names on this Flashpoint EU roster, I think, are tied to that name through and through. Mandrax University e os Balamansa.
Done some great things. So now having two Flashpoints, I think, is pretty exciting.
É verdade. E o que vai rolar hoje é time brasileiro, mano. Time brasileiro que vai jogar hoje.
Because of that representation, but also having arguably one of the best teams in North America to represent that name.
Os Balamansa, mas é real, mano. Muito louco.
As it goes on, I think we're going to see a lot of that white wolf at the top of the standings in both regions.
Well, you bring up the standings, let's take a look at where all these 0-0 teams stand. Of course, this is going to be the EU region, so you see all of those matchups. Everyone, of course, hasn't played just yet. These will be updated by the end of the day today. But we sort of briefly brought up how contested this region is. I mean, I look at 5 randoms as well. Accentra, Bolka, Ninu, Zarini, Spunky. I think that is a roster that, although we're not going to be watching them on stream today, I think they can maybe make some strides here in EU.
I think so. As they click a little bit, I think it's going to be a lot better. Especially with Spunky.
É foda, né? Um joguinho tão bobo, né, mano? Tipo, a galera curte pra caramba.
But I mean, I don't think we could ignore the juggernaut that is D69. I mean, we talked about how contested the regions were. I don't think they dropped a map the entire qualifiers, the entire group stages, excuse me, and that was the area that we thought was going to be the closest, them fighting all against each other.
Yeah, it seems we're not doing the region justice if we don't mention D69. I cannot wait to see how all of these matchups break down, because it seems like I want to highlight one team, there's another team that you have to highlight. Let's jump in to matchup number 1, Rosvet up against
Os Balamansa, muito bom esse nome, né?
Where we will head Splitstone, Frog Isle. Unfortunately, we will
brasileiro, né, mano?
New Frog Isle here in matchup number 1, Ascension Peak and Bizarre Band Out. So Kresnik, we're starting off on a tried and true Paladins map here in Stone Keep.
Yeah, and I think it's a good choice to
Eu
start.
espero que eu não tô num processo
I
pra tá
actually had an
fazendo
ounce of
isso.
hope that we were going to see Frog this set, but I realized that we're watching Flashpoint EU. Of course we're not going to see
right.
Frog Isle. They've been banning it literally for an eternity, but Stonekeep, I think it's a good place to start for Rosvet, honestly. I don't think this is their pick, but having banned
eles
two
tão-
of the wider maps,
Tá rolando
going to a
partida
map
agora.
where blasters are going to be really important, I think is kind of a big deal for these PC teams against the console
Mas se ficar meio
teams.
chato, eu
It's
saio
one of the
fora,
bigger
mano.
edges that they
A gente
have,
finaliza
having
aí.
characters that aren't
Eles estão
as
banindo
helpfully
os
innocent.
personagens. Porra, eu
Yeah.
queria ver o jogo,
And I
mano.
think that was we briefly were able to talk
Vai ficar
on
falando, hein?
diving into the schedule and
Baniram
maps
a
and things like that.
Eevee?
It's so
Caramba.
easy to say, well, they're a console team,
Eevee,
you
Bomb
just ban
King.
out, you know, Victor and Vivian or
No outro
whatever.
time baniram
It's easy
Janus.
to forget that Flashpoint are playing up against PC teams, so they have
E a
a whole
Vivian.
PC meta that they
Nossa,
need
que
to kind
ban
of look
estranho,
at
né?
and potentially ban out. And I think we're seeing a pretty heavy dose of both of those. Vivian, Genos banned out here for Rosvet. Eevee, a pretty popular ban from console up against
Agora ele
PC
faz
teams,
direto
banned out here for Flashpoint.
react do campo.
Yeah, that's the main thing I've
Scope
noticed.
CS.
That's the one
Ah,
thing they
da
want
hora.
to get rid of, and everything else they're not really as concerned about.
Vitão.
I don't think they're feeling too concerned about much
Compartilha minha live
now
aqui,
that they
rapidão.
have that ROM so strong. Even after the nerfs this patch with the damage
You
reduction on the
trespass
dash,
and are
getting
unwanted,
reduced, a little bit
stranger.
less damage on the dash as well, but everything that makes him good and have to get focused is still there in his kit. He's still going to have that sustain. He's still going to have resets on that sustain. So I think it's a great start for Flashpoint, and having a Fury to back that up too is actually kind of insane, especially for Stonekeep.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking about some of the compositions we saw getting
Por que a
drafted
Vivian?
in
Porque a
the
Vivian é OP,
qualifying.
mano. Depois que ela ulta,
Rob
cara,
Fury
é muito
Yang.
dano, mano.
Maybe
É muito
back
dano.
that
Conhece o
one
galera?
second.
Não, não conheço,
We've
mano.
seen like a hint of this here and there, but a double healer
Não
composition
conheço, man.
picked up here for Flashpoint. What do you make of that here, Chris?
It's just nice to have that extra sustain. I talked about how Victor and Vivian were so good because that extra damage offsets the extra healing. Not if you got two of them. They're gonna be those are some players that are gonna be doing good damage, and with all that extra healing, that might be enough to get rid of the advantage that Victor gives you.
Well, the health pool that they will
Nossa,
be able
os
to
caras-
sustain is
os caras
quite
jogam
massive.
com
You have a
Talos,
Rom,
mas não
a
jogam
Terminus,
com-
and now a
com
Catalyst to
Eevee,
round
mano.
out your composition
Daqui
here
é
for
chato pra
Flashpoint.
cacete,
Rosvet
mano.
have drafted themselves a good composition by and large. They have a triple DPS, kind of maybe that's a little extra damage to try to counter out some of that double healing that you see picked up for Flashpoint.
I think that's the plan. It might be tough into the Talus though, because that's more targets that the Talus can kind of just run down. But Rosvet with actually more or less 4 DPS with that Grover, he's going to be helping a lot, I think,
Yeah.
on those
É
damage
exatamente
sharps,
isso que eles estão
getting some
falando. Tipo, eles não entenderam
Also gonna
por que
help against
que
that
tá o
ROM
Talos.
too,
Porque ele
but
tem um
they're
DPS
not gonna
muito
be able to
maior
do
do
that
que da Eevee,
surround
por
and
exemplo.
spread that you want to do with triple DPS, because they're all going to have to be playing close enough to their Grover to get saved.
What's kind of the dynamic
E
of
de
this
fato é
matchup?
um
I mean, I
DPS
think
que
we've
o
seen
Grover não pode
triple
salvar.
frontline up against
É um
triple
DPS que não tem
DPS,
tanta
and
cura assim não,
you
velho.
kind of see where maybe once cauterizes
Esse
come
guris.
online, you can, you know, see,
E
feel the
aqui é o
ebb and
seguinte,
flow
mano, quando
of
os
this
caras
matchup.
jogam
I
assim,
gotta
eles
admit, I haven't
geralmente
seen a whole lot of
fazem...
double healer up against triple DPS
Ah,
compositions as we
como
jump
se
in
diz?
to game number 1. How do you see kind of the dynamic
É sempre
of this
a
matchup
câmera
playing out?
de algum dos jogadores, tá?
I think on this
Aí vai
map
ficar mudando isso
specifically,
aqui.
Rosvet's going to have to take high ground because they want to kind of
Deixa eu
surround
aumentar pra
them,
vocês, porque a hora
get
deve estar
that
pequena,
spam.
né?
Unless Flashpoint all locks himself in there, then they can play outside. But if they're not, then they just want to get that high ground to spam down on them and not
assim,
give them a
não.
chance, I think,
Fica
to
assim,
collapse
ó.
that easily.
Well, ladies and
Aqui,
gentlemen,
mas-
it is week number 1, game number 1.
Pra vocês verem os personagens
2020
ali.
Paladin season, and it's starting off with the first blood for Skeppy. This Talus combines with Rom and Trensik to move through the high ground, drops down Madara, now with no Victor playing that high ground for Rosvet. They're gonna have a tough time really winning this mid fight. They were able to get about 48%.
É, o
You can see the
Paladins ele
raw
é bem
power and
exagerado
the raw
mesmo.
sustain that this Flashpoint
Isso é
composition
real.
is bringing through, and Trensik, he's not worried about anything. He's just running them down, Chris.
Esse
He's
miserável
melting
desse,
through them right now, and
desse
this
Raul,
ROM
mano.
gonna get all that healing, and they
cura
can't get
certa,
through
cara.
because he's
Esse
isolating them.
morre
He's
não,
taking
velho.
one-on-ones, and he's not
Otários,
fighting multiple angles.
safadinho.
That's where the triple DPS is gonna falter when they're not all able to watch the same spot.
Tem que jogar com
They
bom
trade out
cuidado.
one kill
Detalhe,
onto
eles
the
não estão vendo
Terminus,
os
but
inimigos
it's
pelas
a
paredes, tá?
lowly one kill as the rest of Rosvet pushed back to the high ground on their side of the map. 66% for Flashpoint climbing now. Make sure not to
Nossa,
charge
não
up
consigo.
that counter just yet, or the reversal rather, from the Androxus to fit in range. Maybe could make a play here, but it's 87% where Flashpoint stall out. Trensik taken very low. Defit finds the
fio.
final, maybe most important shot. Whirlwind first to the game. For Rosvet is going to set up Defit for a nice double kill. Good lad. He's looking a little nervous now. He has the siphon pulled up, but the dash backwards is going to plug him down. Phobuz finishes
Nossa,
it
muito
off.
bom
and
isso, mano.
Suddenly, Krezik,
No PC o Shaolin é uma desgraça, cara. Ah, lembrando que essas partidas são de PC, tá? Vocês vão ver os caras fazendo uns bagulho mó miraculoso. Eu tentei reproduzir algumas delas um tempo atrás aí com Androxus.
The double CC to counter the ROM was massive earlier. Root him, he's like, ha! I baited out your CC, and then immediately got crippled while trying to run away, gets torn apart, and he's kind of the crux of their comp. When they get those CCs off at the same time, Trensic's not going to have anywhere near as much of an impact as he would have otherwise.
Well, I think that's a big turnaround, and patience is key there from Rosvet. Things looking dire.
E você pode perceber que tipo, os caras jogam sempre com sempre com a mecânica muito foda, mano. Tipo assim, tanque sempre à espreita, né? Junto com. Sempre esperando um pouco junto com a cura. Sempre no campo de visão da cura, na verdade, né? Flancos jogando sozinho, assim, separadão do time, justamente pra surpreender. Isso aí é estratégia básica, mano, do Paladins. Ó.
He needs to finish off the low health targets that potentially the ROM is diving. Adding the damage from the Talus in with the sustain from the ROM is really tough to go through, but when they're on the back foot like this, it's going to be so hard to find a foothold.
Yeah, they lose Storm Avatar, and then some ultimates cascading down is going to drop off Skeppy as well. Good lad.
Nossa! Mais uma coisa que eu não sabia. Pô, deveria mostrar a barrinha, né, da habilidade. Nossa, os caras levaram fácil isso, cara. Muito fácil.
And I think it was on the patience from Rosvet, because once we got around that final corner, they used the Illusory Rift, they used the Inflame. That is one of the scariest potential combinations you can hear coming from a team. They're getting the Ying healing, they're getting the damage boost, the speed boost.
E pode perceber também, o Groover ali ele tá curando mais e a galera tá tudo junto com eles. Ah, DPS do novo patch, não sei escrever. Shaolin ficou bem melhor. O problema do Shaolin, mano, na verdade, é jogar com ele, mano. A mira dele não é fácil, cara. Caraca, eu não sabia que dava pra pré-reverter. Então, exatamente, foi com isso que eu me... Foi isso que eu fiquei impressionado, cara. Achei muito louco. Você pode ver, tipo, o flanco ele pode estar panguando ali e tal, não sei o que. Mas tipo, mano, ele sempre vai procurar a cura. Ele vai dar um tirinho ou outro a mais e tal. Mas geralmente pra cura ou pra quem tá panguando demais. Pode dar uma desestabilizada. Time não sabe nem como jogar mais, mano. Olha, os caras sem chance.
Yeah, and they even
não conseguem jogar.
With the same exact mistake again, but apparently it doesn't really matter. They're trying to take it.
Bem que isso daí é
Boba's is here up top, diving into their whole team, but now the rest of his team's not getting healed.
Well, Skeppy onto Madara one more time, but Phobos shortly follows here. Ethereal is going to drop down the seismic crash, but enough healing is going to buy a little bit of time for Goodlad before Defit finds the smart angle. Skeppy back from respawn, cleans up.
Usar o soquinho do Talus pra esquivar também é muito bom. O Talus deveria estar no flanquear lá atrás, mano. Ó, todo mundo andando junto com o Groover, cara. Puta, essa cura desse Groover vai ser gigantesca no final da partida. Se em um round só, mano, já deu 80 mil.
Watch out, those healers do plenty of damage themselves. Ethereal finds the first kill on the good lad.
Sempre assim, ó, flanco jogando sozinho, separado do time.
From Flashpoint, you're gonna have to send a couple others down to the point to assist. Skeppy, Prosper Logic all down, fighting in this overtime here. Skeppy's found himself the double kill. Overtime starting to melt away, just needs a few more shots, and it looks like Flashpoint have found the fight they needed.
E você vê que tipo, eles não fazem muita jogada assim, tipo de double, triple, mata pra caralho, não sei o que, não sei o que lá. Não, cara, é de boa. É só estratégia, ó. Pode ver que eles se movem juntos, mano. Só esse hall loucão aí.
Yeah, a lot of these fights have kind of pivoted off Skeppy or Prosper being able to plug away some decent damage. And
é o meu time preferido não, mano. Na verdade eu nem costumo. Fala, Leandro, obrigado pela presença aí. Eu nem costumo assistir, mano, campeonato assim, cara. Eu não gosto porque, assim, tem muita gente que se baseia nesses campeonatos pra poder jogar, formar suas estratégias e tal. Eu não gosto, cara, porque, tipo, mano, não é uma regra, entende?
I think it's going to be a lot harder for the ROM because his self-sustain is even relying on Cauterize too, but that Terminus I think will get better and better. His ability to cleanse Cauterize will make them kind of underestimate the fights that they're going to be taking against him and think they can get away with more.
Well, I say, maybe late game they drop off, but Flashpoint here in the mid game have found themselves their first point, looking for their second and in flame. It's going to set up this aggressive push. Trenzik has found maybe just a little bit too much, but look how much sustain that ROM has, and I think that's important to look at. Kresnik, he was face tanking like 4 members right there, and even with some Cauterize starting to come online,
porque a partida personalizada, né? Tem esse negócio, se tiver qualquer oscilação na conexão, o jogo pausa.
He can force so much attention in his direction, and sometimes even make it out of eye.
That's exactly what it is. Even when you have counters to ROM, you have to send resources to him. Sometimes, you know, an Ashe dashes behind, you're like, oh, well, it's Ashe, I'm just going to walk away and, you know, do whatever I want. But that ROM does enough damage from medium range, and him hitting you makes him live even more. You have to spend resources on it. If you don't, he will get away with something. He'll ult you from behind, he'll run through your team again, and just pulling that away, no matter how many counters you have, is why ROM has kind of risen to this pick ban, need to have him, need to get rid of him stats.
Voltou a partida praticamente do ponto que estava.
But you can see the silhouettes there. It took 3-4 members of Rostet with some consistent damage to put him down. This is going to be the start to a good defensive fight, or maybe the end to a good defensive fight, rather, for Rostet. Just because it's so intriguing. I mean, you know, Inflame is kind of typically seen as that go button. Are you kind of using that on cooldown, or in an ideal world, are you sometimes popping Illusory Rift in Flame maybe at the same time to just give yourself even more of an edge?
I think it depends on how the other team's holding. With how defensive they are, I think you might want both, but if they both charge pretty quickly, you can kind of throw it out. Prosper does it now, and they don't get much with it, but they do force them back. I think that's enough. They're going to charge that way faster than the Inflame because of the amount of healing and damage that Ying is doing, so they might have the combo again to actually convert this payload.
Right, it's kind of
that Paladins tá acontecendo no Mixer também. Sim, tá acontecendo no Mixer e comigo nos 4 canais, né? Eu tô re-streamando.
One member is down here from Rosvet, 5 strong from Flashpoint. Madara forced to backpedal himself back into his base with the Fit playing sniper from up above. Serial falls as well. That's a big payload contester that is now gone, especially in a triple DPS composition. Only squishies remaining, rooted down there. Is good lab, but suddenly Phobos has to move down. Whirlwind gives his team a little bit of extra healing, and that's enough to give Hayes the edge over Trenzik here. But good lab immediately turns it around. Defit has to move himself down to the low ground. Madara sniping away. Reanimate is available. Should Terminus choose to use it here in this moment? Ethereal back from base. Madara, he's done such a good job of staying alive here in this fight, Kresnik, but not long enough. And Ethereal and Madara finally fall. And
é difícil manter a carroça ali naquele ponto.
It was great priority actually by Flashpoint, going for the Victor first, because they know that once that Victor's back away, they have basically free reign over that Inara. Still though, Rosvet, I think they were reacting fine, but the positioning that Flashpoint had by the end just made it way too difficult. You can see how well those triple DPSs are doing though. All 3 damages high on the charts. And Prosper on focusing Lens Ying.
Caramba, o Charlin tá dando muito dano, velho. Já chegou em 1k.
That should show how important that sustain is.
100k, aliás.
And at 11, 5, and 9, I think Skeppy is, you know, despite being lower on the damage charts, you pointed out, but I like the way that now it's kind of come to fruition. You figure he might need to be finishing off a lot of these low health targets, and 11, 5, and 9, despite being lower on the damage charts, means he's been positioning himself pretty well and finding some of those last minute kills that he's needed to. Storm Avatar does have the Inflame here, and he's going to pop it to start off this fight here for Flashpoint. This is an important one. No fast cap here for either team. Ultimate burn from Skeppy as well, and he's found Madara in the back line. Shaolin has to dash himself backwards into the heat haze. Remember, he can move now, and Trenzik can't quite track it. Flashpoint to get themselves 36% and climbing here in a good zone on Rosvet.
The fact that Flashpoint was contesting the point earlier, I think, shows how quickly they're adapting to this, because they know that they can't give away that, because they could just lose a fight. This triple DPS can be so explosive, they can't give them a chance to take away their retake.
Ethereal moves in and gets the kill onto one of the two healers. Skeppy melts down Madara. This Victor has not had free range to stand anywhere. Skeppy has made sure to clip that right where he stands. Good Lad finds the kill onto Ethereal as well. So 2 damage dealers and a support. All that's left here for Rosvet. 90% and growing for Flashpoint. Reanimate from Terminus. You're going to have to jump down. Nobody elects to do so. And Flashpoint, in a much more convincing mid-fight, they grab point number 3. 1 push away from taking map number 1.
Let that be a lesson to anyone who said that Terminus's ult after the damage nerf isn't going to be useful. He gets a second life, he contests it, forces things that you otherwise wouldn't be in situationally.
Aqueles dois, ele tava na merda, velho. Tava na merda. Por que você acha que é o melhor lugar pra fazer live? Qual você acha que é o melhor lugar pra fazer live? Mano, eu gosto bastante do YouTube, porque no YouTube eu consigo guardar e organizar. Os vídeos depois da live. Embora eu tô percebendo aí que essa...
They're on the back foot, and they need to figure out this defense right now. And remember, Flashpoint were able to get it done in an overtime. But I think, you know, what we've seen through and through in these mid-fights, and even towards the late game, and even right here as well, is Madara just has not been able to get comfortable.
The biggest thing I think is Madara keeps thinking he can 1v1 wrong. He can't do it, and you can see because of that damage being gone, the rest of Flashpoint, the rest of Rosvet, excuse me, is just falling apart over this pressure.
Suddenly 2 are down, and Madara's going to use that barrage from the back line to try to find the kill. Storm Avatar instead, he's found the kill onto Ethereal through the wall. And that's a big turnaround here for Flashpoint. Rosvet, they have a couple of ultimates and might need to use them, but Hayes, he's not going to have the time to get back in this fight. Whirlwind, but it's only topping off 3 members of Rosvet here. Trenzek uses his ultimate, down go 2. And that's Phobos on the high ground who will fall as well. Skeppy maybe one that Rosvet needed to find, but Ethereal is the only one contesting now. If he falls behind that wall, things are going to get dire. Shoulder bash, or not shoulder bash, but the charge right on through from Trenzek as Storm Avatar finds the kill. That's 2, make it 3 down. Flashpoint, they're going to roll their way in. And after going down 2-0, they're going to win this one 4-2.
God, that feels bad for Rosvet. When every single one of your whirlwinds is used just to contest the point because your solo tank died, maybe you gotta rethink your draft a little bit. There is just
Dave, quando vai ser a próxima live de Shadow Man? Hoje mesmo, mano. Hoje à noite eu vou fazer. Terminando essa live aqui do... Terminando isso aqui eu vou tirar um cochilo, porque eu acho que os remédios estão fazendo efeito. Inclusive eu tenho que tomar um outro já. Eu tenho que tomar. Aí eu vou dar uma dormida e hoje à noite eu faço.
Healing and damage that he was able to do. Ended at 2-5 and 23. Prosper Logic did on that Ying. I mean, largely, you know, half maybe negative slash lines there, some close to that medium negative range, but the 15, 7, and 9 from Skeppy by and large the most positive on their team. So 80,000 healing for Prosper Logic as well as doing 100,000 damage. That is a big damaging
Andy is Ying.
O dano que o...
Just gonna drop a casual 2k over at Andy.
Yeah, I'll be okay with that, and you know, that's
Terminus tomou ali, Jesus amado,
thing maybe to be mindful of. Obviously, if you have a player that's comfortable with playing Ying in a potentially more damaging role, she still does a massive amount of healing, 20 or so thousand behind what Storm Avatar was able to do, and then top damaging on his team. It was just a little bit too much for Rosvet to overcome.
Yeah, it reminds me of we saw
então, Rush, embora eu goste muito do YouTube, cara, também eu gostei bastante do Facebook. Porque tem um alcance bem bacana, tipo, a galera tá com acesso mais fácil e mais rápido, né? Fica legal também.
And, you know, obviously, I think when Serpent Beach comes out, and especially this early on in the season, I mean, it becomes kind of a worn talking point later on, but it's always good kind of at the fresh start of a new Paladin season to kind of bring up some of the obvious points of that Serpent Beach. I think mobility is so important here on this map, and remember, Flashpoint and the previous picks and bans took away the EV, so that's a prime maybe suspect here for Flashpoint to take away as well. But I think mobility, vertical mobility, most notably in picks and bans,
telas totalmente diferentes um do outro.
Where these teams will have to find a little bit of extra
emphasis. E aqui a segunda partida eles estão
banindo. We're going to see Maeve, Andro, Buck.
Nossa, vão banir o velhinho, mano, nessa tela.
A little bit back into relevance with with bulk up being such a powerful
não,
talent,
empurra
keeping him
assim, lá no
alive,
finalzinho.
especially
fica
again
muito chato.
after the cauterized nerfs, plus having that rejuve
Só não
card on
entendi também o
himself.
bando Androxus ali.
There's so much that he can get away with now that he wasn't able to
The
do
next
before
time you
season
see
3
my
started.
banners, run.
Oh, Androxus first banned out here.
Boa virada, né, mano?
Not surprising at all going
Live
to Leon.
Corona,
They're
boa
one of their
tarde.
favorite
Fala,
compositions,
Adriano. Obrigado pela presença aí,
in
meu
the
filho.
last split that they played was
Não,
kind of
foi uma
that
puta uma virada.
Leon
A Indy
paired with
fez
the Victor or
100k
Vivian
de
or
dano,
Tyra or something.
exatamente, mano.
Of the like Skeppy and Prosper
You
Logic both can
trespass
play the
an
Leon, both
unwanted
will play the Leon
stranger.
if need be. I think though, especially with game number 1, maybe we're starting to sense that if they play some of these weird kind of compositions, like an off damage, like a Ying, maybe Prosper Logic will
Então,
end
pelo
up
que deu
being the
pra
one that
perceber
has to
ali,
flex.
mano,
I will bring
a
an
real é
Yeah, and I would like to see
que
that. I want to see Prosper,
o
how
dano
deep his champion pool can go
O
as they
dano.
go through this.
Yeah.
I love seeing Inara.
não tá compensando os caras usarem dois tanques, mano.
Were kind of brutal. All of his self-sustain cards were hit, so people are saying, well, hey, our supports are like the best in the world. Why don't we just get Inara every time? Well, I think we're going to see her rising a lot over the season.
Well, Rosfed are going to opt for a similar strategy here in picks and bans number 2. They ban out the Vivian, and they also pick up the Victor here to start off their draft. It's very similar, the exact same rather, from what they did on map number 1. Rom makes his way through a little bit later on
escolhe os
here, though.
personagens
Flashpoint feeling
assim,
comfortable running back
de cada
something
vez,
very
justamente porque não
similar.
pode repetir.
Actually, 3 of the 5, and now 4 out of the 5, they're just going to swap out
Ah, então a
the,
Fúria tá fazendo a
catalyst for the
cura e
Leon
a
here.
Indy tá
Flashpoint, if
fazendo
it isn't broken,
o dano,
they'll
né?
fix it.
Por isso que ela conseguiu fazer 100k.
God, I think I would. I know it's Serpent
Form up
Beach where like
and follow
verticality
me in.
means a lot, but I think I would still ban Rom after that last game. I think
Yeah.
that's just a lot to deal with. But Rosvet, I think they might think their weakness was having that third DPS, not having that second tank, and they're going to bring in this newly buffed Ashe, kind of I guess reverted Ashe, getting that extra damage back. Maybe she'll be able to bully out that Leon, that Ying, but the cauterized that she's spreading isn't as potent as it used to be.
And that was something I was nervous about in game number 1. I'm curious to see maybe if the cauterize starts to clip the wings a little bit of Flashpoint. In game number 2, as we jump down into Serpent Beach, Flashpoint up against Rosvet. Game number 2, Flashpoint was able to take Stone Keep 4-2 in game number 1, and they're going to run it back here, Kresnik. Double healer, if you can even call it that. Prosper Logic top DPS on his team in the last game, and just 20 or so K healing behind. Storm Avatar was providing as well. Rosvet opting for an aggressive rotation back behind the high ground here.
Vai correr atrás da Ashe. Putz, achei que ele ia correr atrás da Ashe.
Playing the Ashe this time. Tough game on the Victor in game
Parado
number 1,
pela
but
Inara ali,
similar
será?
notes
Não
of the
percebi.
previous game's point fights. 50% already here for Flashpoint.
Trensic bought so much time, but finally they do find a kill. I was going to say he was just buying time, but they weren't finding anything from it other than this cat time, and this Inara is just getting bullied off. She can't contest this at all, and she's going to get forced in soon with, alright, all her cooldowns up, but maybe not enough if they turn for her.
Yeah, Ethereal touches a toe outside and immediately gets chipped away by Prosper Logic and Skeppy, who is the one playing that Leon here. Madara has moved their way in. Ethereal, he's getting broken down. No more front lines for Rosvet. There's no world where I see a Victor contesting this one. This is going to be point number 1 over to Flashpoint. It took them into the late game to figure out this double healer comp on Stone Keep. They've got it working early here in game number 2.
I am a little curious what Hayes was thinking. He did kind of poppy into the entire team, and I know BK
Yes,
in ranked
right.
is like first pick. It's pretty important, but like it really isn't that good. You got to figure out what you want to do with it exactly.
Mó diferente, né, de ver eu jogando e ver esse profissional jogando.
Position here. This is one of the best maps for it. And it's going to be so hard for
Você vê que os caras nem se
for
esforçam pra
anybody to
fazer, pra
take
dar um
that high ground. You
headshot.
can already see they're already struggling to push under
Isso
this
vai
onslaught from above.
meu Deus, vai tacar o
I'm
Terminus pra
curious
fora,
to
quer
see
ver?
how Prosper
Apesar que ele
plays this
pegou-
one, though, how aggressive he might look to
Pegou
get
resiliência.
with some of those Ying clones and kind of teleporting to
Nossa,
one or
esse
the other.
Trifalder
Because I
revolve,
guess
né?
if there is a weakness of this Flashpoint composition on this map
Como ele pegou
specifically,
resiliência, então vai ficar
it
de
is
boa.
that vertical mobility we talked about, and this is the place where Rosvet are going to feel comfortable. They've got Victor, you can see up here, to fit up on the high ground. This is where you want to be if you're Rosvet, and I'm curious to see who from
Nossa,
Flashpoint
esse moleque
maybe
aí
tries
tá
to
com a internet
challenge
meio
that high
cagada, hein?
You can get up top with Terminus, it's
acho.
just a little bit tricky, and you have to go through fire, I believe, unless you get like a pixel-perfect Shatterfall over by that new ledge that watches over the main hill, but it's going to be hard for them to get up without getting noticed, especially since it's easy to cover that whole upper area. Ying is going to sing when she places her illusions up top, so even if you don't see her, you'll hear her because of that mermaid skin, making it, I think, abundantly clear about where she wants to go. It's going to be tough for them to push. What I'm thinking is they have to break through orange. They have to send Rom through that under area, have him go up top when they're distracted, then Ying will sing her way to the high ground, Terminus will jump up, and if they can collapse on everybody who comes back for Trensic, which is probably the point of their composition anyway, I think that's their way to convert this payload and go up 2-0.
Yeah, Prosper has made the damaging look good. I don't know if the flanking is quite the idea here. You can't quite be sneaky, as you point out, with some of those voice lines. But, you know, brute force was kind of the way they got it done early in this game, and enough sustain and healing, and rely on more of the same to get this choke point taken. A couple coming back from base here. So you still have a minute left. Flashpoint just now getting some of those ultimates back online. Rosvet, 3 of the 5 available. Flashpoint, they mirror that one. We will maybe get a look at kind of that 1-2 dynamic of an Inflame with the illusory rift. You can even maybe pop one and then the other to just kind of drag out some of these fights. But I kind of like the way Trensic is playing this one, trying to find a flank and forcing down Madara.
I don't know if I like Madara dropping, though, because no one else rotated. If more people than Goodlive rotated, that could have been a kill, but he was the only one who reacted to the call. Everyone else was so far back that it just ends up being completely free for Rosvet. If you want to break this defense, you have to work as a team. You can't just go on solo plays like that.
Yeah, the thought was maybe there, but the rotation potentially not. They forced a couple down from the high ground, but didn't find much more for it. 20 seconds remaining on this push for Flashpoint. A whole lot of ground to cover here if you're them. Rosvet, they'll feel comfortable probably holding on to some of those ultimates, trying to go 5 strong into the next mid-fight. You're going to be waiting on that Braum ultimate to come up just a little bit longer. I'm not sure you're in the position just yet to maybe burn too many of those ultimates. Trensic moving in, getting aggressive. Poppy Bomb backwards, just enough to delay Hayes' life, but nobody on, and they burned the Inflame. That is a bit of a fumble there from Flashpoint, Kresnik.
Oh, that looked so good, but no one was... The tanks were synced actually perfectly. Trensic runs through, turns around, Goodlad is immediately there to Siphon on him. You're like, I have to shoot Braum, but I can't shoot Siphon, and they set this perfect kind of just gambit that they couldn't have an answer to, but during this play, no one else thought about the payload. Storm Avatar, Prosper, neither of the supports decide to move to the objective.
Ah, que da hora, fica mostrando no deck dos caras.
Trensic was absorbing so much. I'd say
Fala,
that's a
Bacon, obrigado pela presença aí, mano. Eles não ficam usando muito spray, né? Não tem costume não, cara. Até porque é meio desrespeitoso, né? Sei lá, acho meio bosta esse bagulho dos caras mata spray. Emote é mais legal, pra falar a verdade. Nossa, mano, que desgraça que é becado.
He's found a little bit of a flank here, not enough damage to melt through that Terminus. Instead, he's got to turn tail, shoulder bash his way back to safety. Flashpoint have found themselves right back on the point. They're in control of this mid-fight.
You can't bully the ultimate bully Braum himself. Ash is trying so hard, but just could not go through. Flashpoint have complete control, and you can see how aggressive they're being. Terminus was shatter falling into the back, and they're taking all this ground in main.
Nossa, mano. E Victor tomou dano de besta ali, velho. Olha isso, mano.
This is looking like a great mid-fight for Flashpoint at 81%. They're going to grab themselves their second point this game, and now the ugly push starts to rear its head again for Flashpoint. But they've gotten themselves a little bit of extra ground to start off with, but immediately falling back. So Rosvet, they do drop the mid-fight, but comfortable maybe.
É só body shot, cara. Tira na cabeça, mano.
Yeah, but Flashpoint was showing signs of life, I think, near the very, very end of that push. If they can execute like that again, it could be pretty tough for Rosvet. They just need to actually sync, but with this illusory rift, they might want to go now, moving together on the left side.
Yeah, you can see the aggression moving through the left side of this map here. The 2 front lines from Flashpoint dropping in. That side's been crashed down, and it locks up Goodlad, but a big stun.
Nossa, quase combou, mano. Caralho, ia ser muito foda isso. Ia ser muito foda isso, velho.
Just a little bit of help from Trensic, but he's not worried about it. Inflame is going to keep this one rolling with 2 members of Rosvet left alive, and that will soon become 1.
Caraca, mano. Nossa, jogaram muito ali, velho. Eu já ia apertando o botão aqui pra ver. Raul tá acertando muito headshot. Ah, mas o Raul é mais de boa. Dave, PC pode jogar com console? Sim, pode sim, mano. Na verdade, PC joga com os 4 consoles ainda. Quer dizer, são 4 plataformas, né? Então joga as 4 plataformas de boa. PC, Xbox, PlayStation e Nintendo Switch.
Give your team a
Todos
fighting
jogam
chance.
juntos.
Hayes is going to drop down and look for a kill on his
Double
Storm
kill.
Avatar, and that's going to be good for the double. Trenzik
Nossa, mano.
is
Eu
going to
tinha
try
que
to
ter esperado
run
a
his way
corrida
out of this
acabar.
one, and he will do so successfully. No way to stop that one, and seemingly right back to
Vixe,
square one
mano.
here, Kresnik. His flashpoint.
Deixa eu ver meu e-mail aqui, que eu acabei de receber a notificação de direitos autorais.
Prosper is learning why this is the worst map in the world to play support on.
É só
You're like,
zoeira,
alright
gente. Só tô
guys, great
assistindo de
fight, we
zoeira só.
did it, mission accomplished, I'm dead.
O proprietário dos direitos autorais usa ID, indicou algum material no seu vídeo, isso não deve ser considerado um aviso de direitos autorais. Essa reivindicação não afeta o status de sua conta. Há anúncios em seus vídeos com receita direcionada para o proprietário dos direitos autorais e ele recebe estatísticas sobre as visualizações do vídeo. Não, de boa, mano. De boa. Então o Mixer ou Hi-Res, né? Não sei qual é a empresa que faz a parada. Cara, por mim tá de boa, mano. É só pra divulgar o jogo mesmo, que eu acho muito louco. E é um game que merece, mano, ser compartilhado assim, porque tem muita gente que tem muito preconceito e fica falando, ah, eu prefiro Overwatch. Cara, Paladins é uma estratégia pura, mano. Claro, tem a habilidade também. Tem esse BK satanás aí. Olha isso, mano. É muito dano esse moleque do caralho aí. Que ódio, velho.
Yeah, I think that Victor is really showing its importance right now in terms of pressuring the back and forcing mobility with that raw damage, but I gotta say that Bomb King in general is keeping up with this damage on the Victor. Hayes has been putting on, I think, a pretty solid performance to keep up with him and to keep that area zoned, but maybe playing a little bit too loose with his life, maybe overestimating the amount of sustain that Bomb King has with that King's Court 5, and we've seen him kind of lose duels to that ROM, and I think Rosvet just needs to stop taking 1v1s to Trenzik. Just turn around, focus him as a team. Yes, I know that's what they want. If you can do it fast enough, you can play the advantage of that pick if you're able to turn around before they can react.
Quero ver as cartas da Fúria, seria da hora mesmo. Acho que vou baixar Paladins no meu PC. Demorou, mano, eu jogo Paladins no PC. Eu comecei jogando no Xbox, hoje em dia eu jogo no PC e utilizo a mesma conta, hein. Nossa, que dano é esse?
To the other side of the high ground. Similar shades of the previous point fights here as Rosvet move themselves into the back line. Barrage chips away the health of Skeppy, but it's not enough.
Fez exatamente o que eu faria, mano.
He dances out of line of sight. Trenzik gets the kill on a Phobos. Now Rosvet's one and only healer is gone, and look at those health bars in the top right. Absolutely melting away, but some important kills returning from Defit and Madara before Ethereal does fall. Victor's gonna have to turn tail and get out of this one. Trenzik finally finds Madara waiting deep back in his base. You're only able to get 45%, but control of this mid one more time over to Flashpoint.
Deveria ter só segurado ali, né,
Rosvet, I felt like had the right idea in mind. They got super aggressive, didn't let Trenzik breathe. Defit was even looking for the Prosper flank, so they had everything they needed to do in line, but they just ran away. Flashpoint just ran away and took the fight that they wanted, and that's what ended up turning things around.
Well, lots of ultimates starting to crash here from Rosvet. King Bomb, Whirlwind, both used in this one, as well as the seismic crash. Poppy Bomb backwards from Hayes is going to give him a little bit of distance, but you lost your Victor and Skeppy. That's the big ultimate there, and he's going to find himself the double kill, looking for 3, but Good Lad takes it away. Hayes turns one around on the Prosper.
Ele fez certinho, tipo, o cara já tava quase morrendo, né? Falou, mano, vou atacar no outro ali, pá, e terminou de matar. Partida equilibrada assim, pra caramba.
Yeah, might be why I think they want to go to this map. Just to get things to that 3-3, get a mid-fight, maybe turn things around because of that, but clearly, even though they're winning the defenses, it's going to be so tough for Rosvet to win these mid-fights. When Flashpoint's reacting the way that they are, I feel like they have such good ultimates for this. They have Lose Rift and Inflame when they want to get aggressive, they have Res for when they get pressured too hard. It's just so hard for them to go through, and you can see how aggressive Rosvet wants to be to counteract this. Madara's shoulder bashing all the way behind them right now to take their high ground.
Madara's found his way over to Skeppy, who has to turn tail and get out of that one. You could kind of see what Flashpoint was aiming for. Again, you brought up Defit making a big play to kind of keep the defense where it was at the last time.
Ó, e os caras não conseguem avançar. É muito louco isso, cara.
And just kind of made their way through thanks to some big ultimates. And it worked so well last time, Kresnik, it looks like they might be trying something similar here, waiting maybe for that illusory rift to pop up.
The wall actually was perfect because they couldn't sync up with Good Lad. Now he's stuck in the main, and Juggernaut's gonna get forced as well, but they're not here to help Trinsic, but they're not even looking at him. He's making so much space.
Yeah, the Inflame is going to get Flashpoint in a great spot here. Hayes trades out one, knockback from Madara, drops Trinsic off the map. Suddenly this offensive push is collapsing. Flashpoint down
Oxi,
to one.
se matou,
Storm
mano.
Avatar takes the easy way out, gives Madara the triple kill.
Puta, a internet do Storm Avatar é ruim e ele é ruim também.
Se matou ali à toa. She's over-prioritized, under-prioritized, where she stands and picks and bans, but Madara...
O nervosismo, né, cara? Puta, quando você tá jogando um tipo de partida assim, mano, é embaçado, cara. Eu quando eu jogo Street Fighter já é embaçado. Nossa.
Big kill from Good Lad onto Madara as well. 3 out of 5 ultimates for Flashpoint ready, 4 out of 5 for Rosvet. They found a small opening as Madara, just as we're hyping up the Ashe, does get taken out. Trinsic able to run away. He's gonna get some healing as well. But it doesn't matter, you have a one-man disadvantage when the height is so much in your favor here. Nice stun, but might not mean much. Overtime will begin here. Madara one more time has found himself into the back line. He's going to push back Storm Avatar pretty heavily, but Skippy's found a kill. Onto Phobos. No more healing for Rosvet, at least not for 15 or so more seconds. Madara drops down Enlightenment. That doesn't save your life anymore. Skippy is Hayes. Poppy bombs his way through, trades out his life for one.
Perdeu o healer, já
era. Small opening here for Flashpoint.
The one thing Flashpoint had to do was play their lives, and I think they were doing it well, but Hayes found the one opening. Skeppy, I don't think he wanted to use Enlightenment, but he was just forced to. Flashpoint just have to take the best fight I think that they can now, but look at these defenders. They get such a huge advantage immediately to the flank of the team, and there's nowhere safe for Storm Avatar.
Yeah, they're kind of in the blender down there, and Storm Avatar has to dash backwards. A little bit of healing left from Prosper Logic, but a lot of that's through the Illusory Rift, which is not available. Good Lad throws up the Siphon. Skeppy falls. Good Lad will do the same. That is a quick overtime timer. Third defense of this one and final defense for Rosvet. We're going to one final point fight to decide map number 2.
And both teams going into it with all their ultimates. Prosper's at 80, but
cara, acho que eu não vou ficar jogando, eu acho que eu não vou ficar fazendo live não. Eu vou fazer depois.
The way that Flashpoint have been reacting, I think, has been great so far. Rosvet, I feel like they have the right thing. They just need to.
Ah, e se vocês quiserem assistir a live original, mano, lá no Mixer, no site do Mixer, é só você entrar com sua conta lá, você assiste de boa. Faz que nem eu faço assim. A conta que você usa no Paladins.
They just need to find another way. Maybe Madara has to go even deeper with assert dominance, possibly into the backline, catch the DPS on that rotation. But the rest of his team can't really follow up on him other than maybe a sprinting Victor.
What's every ultimate ready to go except for Prosper Logic, as you point out, aggressive from Hayes as he poppy bombs forward. Trinsic lockdown here, forced down to the low ground, has his ultimate if need be. Hayes is found. The first couple of big kills here for Rosvet, 27% for Flashpoint. The kills all going the way of red. Ethereal Hayes all on the board here. Flashpoint for the first time really in this game, Kresnik. They're on the back foot and a great zone is out for Rosvet.
I guess I was wrong. The answer was just even more aggression up top as they sent Ethereal there, and now Madara in such a good position in the backline. He might force the Enlightenment.
Cagada,
the Inflame is there and helps Skeppy to stay alive, but you had to burn that. Now you don't have it for the retake. Rom ultimate is used here, 81% for Rosvet. Good Lad moves down, on to the point he goes. Reanimate here, should he choose to use it. It looks like he will do so, so he's back, but Hayes, he's just going to turn around and kill him off for a second time. You need the rest of Flashpoint to get in. 99% Trinsic stunned down on the point here. Hayes has gone huge in this final fight. He will continue to do so. You win 3 defenses, and it looks like you're going to win the final mid-fight. Flashpoint, they've been in control this entire game, but Rosvet, they wait for the important moment.
Nossa, desgraçado esse BK, velho. Porra.
Only one fight that really matters. And I think Rosvet, the way that things ended up, with those aggressive tanks, they were able to make that play, but having 2 DPSs that have to get answered. You can't ignore a Bomb King. You can't ignore a Victor. They were able to kind of abuse the fact that the other DPS that wasn't getting pressured just took all the space that he wanted. He made so much room for them. And I think that was part of it, right? At the end, maybe they're like, oh,
o que ele tá falando aqui tem razão. Tipo, mano, não dá pra você simplesmente deixar pra lá o Victor, tá ligado? Meu, ele causa um dano desgraçado. Esse modo rajada dele é meio bosta porque o cara fica camperando. Mas, meu, ele é maravilhoso pra causar dano. Quer ver? Ó, cadê o Victor? Ali, Victor, o da Fit. Não pegou muito ponto. Muito ponto.
Hayes, despite having 10 deaths, found himself 13 kills and 12 assists. Almost up there for
Mano,
top damage in this
155 mil de
game as
dano.
well. Plenty of damage to go around in this one. But it's Rosvet, the damage dealers, and some good healing from Phobos pushes them over the edge.
The damage on Phobos is kind of huge too. I mean, 72k is massive for a support. That's also putting out, 180k healing. Also, gotta say that both of the tanks with their damage reverted on the side of Rosvet, and Inara being able to put up 120k, trading into a Siphon half the time on the point. I think that's huge.
Existem coisas, mano, que não dá pra ignorar. Bom King não dá pra ignorar. Viu? Mata o mais rápido possível. Porque, cara, elimina o sangue do tanque fácil, fácil, fácil. O Victor é outro cara, mano. Puta, se você vê que é um Victor, pelo menos com rajada, né? O outro nem tanto. Só se o cara for muito chato mesmo pra jogar bem com outra lendária. Mas nossa, essa daí, meu Deus do céu.
Coming at you right after this break.
E a próxima partida é em 3 minutos, né? Eu vou fazer. Bom, eu vou fazer o seguinte, mano. Eu não vou ficar fazendo partida inteira. Eu não vou fazer a live de todas as partidas, tá? Eu vou fazer o seguinte. Eu vou encerrar essa live aqui. Cadê o bagulho? Pronto. Eu vou encerrar essa live aqui, tá? E vou ficar jogando, vou ficar fazendo qualquer coisa aqui, comer alguma coisa, sei lá, tomar um café. E quando tiver a partida dos brasileiros, aí eu chamo live de novo pra gente assistir, beleza? Porque fica meio vago assim, né? Fica meio vago. E outra, eu vou procurar se tem algum outro canal aí que faz narração em português pra vocês entenderem também. Porque eu tô ligado que não é todo mundo que vai entender. Eu entendo pouca coisa, então também é meio complicado. Então é o seguinte, eu vou indo nessa, tá? Mas logo menos a gente volta aí pra continuar assistindo o Paladins Pro Circuit. Obrigado pela presença de vocês, Paladins Games.